Good afternoon, everybody. Just want to give a brief shout out to Danny Sessoms, who will be joining us here in a second. He's in the interior of Mexico right now, and he's going to give us a little object lesson in why Dash is so different than cryptocurrencies you might be familiar with, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, et al., all the other ones. Dash really distinguishes itself from the pack, and we're going to give you a little reason why with Danny Skyping in here, hopefully soon from Mexico. But yeah, I was the first one to accept cryptocurrency as payment back in 2012, kind of early in the game, and saw the benefits of cryptocurrency pretty early on, and how, as we as libertarians have always recognized the power and control of central banking in our lives, saw that cryptocurrency was a way to ameliorate that problem and allow us a freer world. And so pretty proud of the fact that I was the first person in Austin to accept it as currency. And there we have Danny's floating head above us right now. So I'll give a little lesson on Dash and its context with the Bitcoin world after we talk about what Danny is doing. And the reason Dash is so different is that, looks like a little feedback, is that it allows you to create a different kind of governance system, whereas Bitcoin doesn't have a governance system. It's an open source project that is very difficult to maneuver when making decision making, which is good in a lot of ways because it's very hard to attack it and to change it the way you want. But it's also very difficult to make changes to it that are necessary for advancing the evolution of the project. Dash has figured out how to do that and has figured out how to do that while remaining open source. And one of the things it's done is create something called the DAO. It's the first one to do it. It's a decentralized autonomous organization. That's called a DAO. And what the DAO has provided the crypto show, which I was the founder of, but these two gentlemen really have taken over the crypto show and done amazing things with it. What it's allowed for them to do is fund a project called DASHCares. And DASHCares has gone around the world helping all types of organizations and people. Was active during the Texas floods recently. It fed over 20,000 people. We bought a Dash boat. Dash was able to buy a boat, and we were doing water rescues with it. But now the project has shifted to Mexico in light of the earthquakes that happened in Mexico. Danny's down there right now using Dash and using the DAO, this decentralized autonomous organization, basically an alternative form of government, we can think of it in that way, to rebuild people's houses. So, Danny, you there? How's it going?
Yes, I am. Yes, I'm here. Hopefully you can hear me and the bandwidth will hold up. But
we can.
Let me give you a little pan just around the street and a look at kind of the destruction here.
Wow.
So, these are multiple houses that have fallen down. We've already almost completed the second house, and I'm at that house right now. Let me give you a brief look at kind of what we've got going here. So their temporary housing is this tin shed right here, as you can see, and It's not exactly ideal living quarters. I'll give you a look inside of that as well. This is Marina's house, and a few people are in here. As you can see, everything is just basically crammed inside of this little box, all of their stuff and everything. And what we've been able to do is build this. This is a solid concrete house with a metal roof. Every bit of it is hand built. They're finishing the floor right now. You can see the toilet is in. The sinks are coming in. Everything's in. Shower, sink, everything. They'll be doing the kitchen and everything. We're looking at building 10 houses here, and we're also looking at rebuilding the community center, and we're actually going to do that a little broader than just Dash. We have other members in the crypto community who stepped up and want to donate money for that, and that'll be pretty interesting. That'll be Bitcoin.com with Bitcoin's, Bitcoin Cash, Roger Ver, Zencash, we've got Decred, and a few others. But it's good that they can see what we're doing and they want to be part of it as well. So I think we're setting the example, and maybe people will follow. You know, what I like to say is that no matter what your job is, there's probably a place somewhere in cryptocurrency for you. Because, man, I can barely check my email. My main talent is I'm a roofing contractor. And now here I am in Mexico building houses for people with cryptocurrency.
It's the power of cryptocurrency.
You don't have to be a super nerd to get involved. And, you know, Dash is one of the first to do this, but there are others that have this hybrid model that you can look into. So if you want to quit your job working for fiat, find what you do great, and try to find a way to apply it to the cryptocurrency field. I mean, you know, you don't have to be a developer.
And you've
I guess that's really... Go ahead.
You've mentioned to me that the town government actually is wanting you to contract to build the community center after they've seen your work with Dash. Is that right?
Yeah, and that came in really handy yesterday because there was a local person getting their house done, and the contractor was dragging their feet, and one of the contractors, like, you know, yes men was there. And I was able to drag the president of the city over, like, hey, this is my buddy. And then suddenly everything just started happening. Oh, yes, we'll be there tomorrow to build your house. So, yeah, we have a little influence with the city government here because of what we've been doing.
And I don't know if you mentioned,
I don't know what they did with the money for the community center, and I don't care, but there's a lot of older people who could use a meal for 10 pesos. So we're going to get involved and get it done.
Amen. And by the way, 10 pesos is about like 60 cents, so it's pretty cheap to feed these people. And Danny, I don't know if you mentioned, but what city are you in? And then also, I don't think you mentioned the work you're doing in Acapulco as well.
Oh, well, yeah. So we're in Metepec, Mexico right now. It's a suburb of Puebla. So we're on the opposite side of the volcano from Mexico City. The stuff that we did in Acapulco is we've been working with orphanages over there and kind of setting the example. So it's not just what we were able to, you know, bring in and help the orphanage with, but there's a large expat community there, and we've been able to inspire them to get involved too. So that's, you know, that's another big thing, just inspiring people and getting them to get involved.
Amen.
How much did it cost to build that house that we just saw in Dash in cryptocurrency? How much was that?
Around $8,000 per house is what I'm spending.
Okay.
And yeah, we're starting the third one. We've already broke ground on the third house, and in next week we'll break ground on the fourth house, and we'll just keep going from there.
So that's probably around, what, 13, 14 Dash it took to build that house? Yeah,
it depends. It kind of depends on when I have to cash it out to get it going. And luckily, Bitso has been amazing. The Mexican Bitcoin exchange, Bitso, has been handling that for us. We send them the Dash, and they will send the money to a bank account. So I basically get a family member or a few trusted people here in the city to accept the money, and then they give me the money, and I pay everybody.
And
none of the contractors, no one has a bank account here, so it's really hard to find someone with a bank account.
That might be a good thing.
Well, and that's the thing too, is we already mentioned
right.
The idea to get out of fiat, because I think we all know that fiat is, well, one, it's coercive, it loses value, it ultimately goes bankrupt. There's been no fiat currency other than the current dollar that hasn't destroyed itself. And so what's cool too is that so many people in Mexico are unbanked. They don't have certain biases that come with people who are used to the traditional banking system. And it's Dash and other cryptocurrencies represent a good way for them to become banked without using the legacy banking system in fiat. So
yeah, and another thing is, like, 2 nights ago, we did our show live from the Mexican Bitcoin meetup in Mexico City, and there were about 300 people in attendance. 150 people got turned away. There was literally a waiting list to get in. So Mexico is ripe for cryptocurrency. In fact, the president of the city told me that he opened his wallets the other day, and he now has cryptocurrency here in Metapeg.
El Presidente is now a
Yeah.
coin holder, a Dash holder.
And it's not just Mexico either. A lot of Latin American countries have real interest in cryptocurrency. Danny, a few months back, was at two cryptocurrency conferences, one in Colombia and one in Venezuela. And I'm sure you know the headlines about Venezuela and the terrible thing that socialism has done to them over there. Argentina, I have family there. I was there a few years back at the early part of the show, and I just want to add that I saw a headline there that the inflation rate the previous year was 100%. So a lot of Argentines and other Latin Americans are really on board with this because just out of simple necessity. So,
Yeah, there's in America, we might think that cryptocurrency is really the place at which it's going to accelerate adoption here in the States. But I think a lot of minds in the crypto space all agree that some of these countries that have runaway inflation and that have been victims of central planning for so long, not that we're not victims of it ourselves, but some of the more extreme cases, like in Venezuela, may adopt cryptocurrency at a far greater pace than here in the U.S. And we're starting to see that. There's something in game theory called the prisoner's dilemma, where you can fight against something for so long, but eventually the benefits of joining it outweigh the benefits of trying to ban it. And we just see that with Venezuela this past week. They've been trying to ban cryptocurrency because of, understandably, it being a threat to their power. But yet this week they now have allowed cryptocurrency to be the form of payment for all government services. So this is the prisoner's dilemma in real time. There will be a point here in the U.S., I believe, where the U.S. government will realize it's too late and that they need to join this revolution in money rather than ban it, based simply on game theory. If they want a seat at the table, they will have to make that decision. So we're starting to see that already, and we're seeing it more and more in Latin America, which is really, really exciting.
yeah, and maybe we could add a little bit more about what DASHCares has done. It's much more.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier about helping out during the Texas floods. Dash was able to get put into action quicker than even our government's response. And Danny was there feeding people, and I was there on a small boat, flat-bottom boat, trying to do water rescues. But how many people do you think you were able to feed, Danny, during the hurricanes?
When that real quick, Harlan, when that happened, I was driving into the storm, and I was at a Walmart parking there overnight getting supplies, and I was parked next to some other RVers who were heading out of the storm, and they thought I was a nut for driving into it.
Well, that still may be the case, but you did really well with that. And do you remember some of the figures about how many meals you were able to hand out?
We had a count on we handed out 3,100 care packages in 12 cities.
Wow.
And some of these, one of the situations was we went to NRG Center in Houston, and they were turning us away, saying that they had more than enough. But when we asked the people inside, out in the parking lot, they're like, no, we don't have any of this stuff. They're not giving it to us. So we kind of found a way to sneak into NRG Center and sneak the stuff past the guards by getting a volunteer badge, and then we were able to hand out these care packages inside. And it was really disturbing, it was like a TSA checkpoint to get in, and one of the things that really pissed me off is there was a small child, maybe 12 years old, who just walked up to this checkpoint and assumed the position like he was a prisoner. He put his hands out and was ready for the shakedown, and they ran their hands all the way down to his fingertips. The kid's wearing a short sleeve shirt. You can see his arms. Why are you checking his fingertips? It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, and that shows you the power of cryptocurrency, though. Even to break the great firewall of FEMA at the NRG Stadium, crypto found a way, got in to help those people. So there's no stopping it.
And crypto just facilitates private individuals filling in where government fails in these relief efforts. And as we know, government fails time and time again, and everything it does. because it's too centralized and they have these ridiculous security measures.
Yeah, I remember that night that we were on air. The storm was so bad that we didn't even have a signal, so we just broadcast on Facebook Live, and one of our listeners donated Bitcoin, actually 10 Bitcoins, and we were able to just go to work with that. I shifted over onto my shift card and started just hitting Walmarts, and I would go in and just buy them out. So if you were somewhere in Austin and you couldn't buy a toothbrush, it was my fault. I'm sorry.
Well, I just want to mention, because it's not a secret, the gentleman who donated, you may not be familiar with him, but he deserves the credit anyway, Bill Klein. He's an investor in cryptocurrency, and he's a big supporter of Dash, huge supporter of Dash, and we want to thank him. There were also some other individuals who donated, and I just want to mention, back to more of what DashCares has done, and in particular, directly from the Dash DAO governance structure and treasury, which we'll talk about here very shortly. We've fed the homeless here in Austin many times. We've also provided other supplies like toiletries, et cetera, that the homeless need. We cooperated with the head of a Bitcoin meetup up in Seattle to also feed the homeless in Seattle and provide blankets.
We did Vegas and LA, Seattle, and Austin, Houston. So yeah, we got around doing it.
Yeah, and so
when I was out traveling on the road.
I feel like there's other ones that I'm missing, but we've done quite a bit with Dash to help support those in need, and we couldn't have done it without them. And not just with Dash in particular, the community and the cryptocurrency, but again, with this funding model that they have that is, as Harlan kind of alluded to, a way to not just help those in need, but to replace governments, essentially, because this system they have is a non-coercive voting system with the Treasury, does not require force to be able to get things done. Anyway.
Yeah,
and they haven't told
the block size. They changed the block size in 24 hours. They didn't argue. They didn't argue about it for 3 years. They just did it.
Well, we'll try to cover that, but that's pretty controversial. But they haven't directed you, Danny, at all. They haven't told you what house to build and where to build it, and what.
No.
You've done sort of this all independently after getting approved by the DAO. You've been sort of able to independently fulfill your promises without any direction from a hierarchical structure, right?
No one ever asks us to say anything. No one, the big boss at Dash doesn't call us and say, "Hey, you need to say this." And and the same thing with Ben Swan. Ben Swan just got sponsored by it, and it's independent media. And he doesn't get a memo every week. Hey, you need to say this and say that. He just does his job, and Dash benefits just by being the sponsor of it. So that's everything. At Anarchapulco, somebody put in a proposal to sponsor for Dash to be the sponsor of Anarchapulco, and that was it. The money went directly to Anarchapulco, and everybody else just pitched in. We all pitched in for free. None of us were paid, and there were like 6 or 7 of us there working the booth. We were just all volunteers because we believed in what we were doing.
And speaking of believing in what we were doing, I just want to mention that we were actually, thanks to Harlan, who first turned us on to Dash, we were supporters of Dash long before we submitted a proposal to their system, and it got approved, and they funded us for our charitable work. So, and again, no one at Dash tells us what to do or what to say, and that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, I think it's great, and I think it's important to distinguish it from a lot of other cryptocurrencies so that people have an idea of the difference between Dash and some of the other ones. Do we want to start talking about Dash and its context?
Yeah, you want to jump into it?
I guess. I don't know. You want to, Danny? Do you have anything else to tell us more about your projects in Mexico, or?
No, just looking forward to getting more of them done.
Yeah.
Actually, let me add one more thing to the Mexico thing.
Okay.
One other thing that we was part of one of our proposals. So we've had a series of proposals that are very similar to each other, but we've added on features of what we're doing with the funding. And one of those is to not just to let people in Mexico, for instance, know about crypto because they're unbanked, but to let them know about crypto because it's so superior to send money over traditional remittance payments. If you're not familiar with what a remittance payment is, it's simply when people from one country work in another, they send money back to their families. That's called a remittance payment. And so it's pretty expensive to do that using Western Union or MoneyGram. With Dash and other cryptos, but Dash in particular, you can send, a few bucks, $100, thousands of bucks for literally pennies. So that's another thing that we're doing in Mexico is spreading awareness about Dash as a remittance payment. So I just want to throw that in there.
Yeah, it's one of the ways we can
I can't add this. Here's a quick look at the first house that we built. We're still going to put a stucco coat on the outside of that, but this is everything. The doors are in.
Wow.
Windows are in.
Wow.
Oh, these are tinted, but it's all ready to go. They'll be moving in just a few days. So, yeah, I'm pretty proud of what we've done.
Should be.
And if people want to donate, Danny, where should they go? Should they go to DASHCares or CryptoShow.com to see where they can donate?
Yeah, they can just message us on there, and we can send an address, or preferably in Dash. We'd like to do as much of this as possible as Dash. And even if you do donate Bitcoin, we love that too, but we will not take your dollars. You can stick them.
That's
right.
Blood money. We don't take blood money.
Well, I guess it. And anything else, Danny?
No, I'm good.
All right.
All right. Well,
All right, brother.
have fun.
Stay
Stay
safe.
cool.
All righty, man.
All right. Take it easy.
All right. So.
All right. At this point, Harlan's going to. Oh, for sure. I'll be a part of this too, but Harlan's going to lead the way on explaining, if you're not familiar with what Bitcoin is, what Dash is, and then how the governance structure, the DAO that he just mentioned works. So give us just a second.
Yeah, there we go. Hello, is this on? Okay. Okay, let's just move forward there. Yep, Dash, short for digital cash. Makes sense. Made sense to me when I heard it. I thought it was a really great project just based on its title alone, since we're all looking for a alternative payment system for the dollar so that we can be freed from its clutches. So Dash, I think, has a great name. Let's see. So assets and digital assets in 2017, certainly there's been a lot of interest as of late. It's increased by 800% in this year alone, which means more and more people are getting interested in digital currencies. But also what happens with that, and I've seen it with my own eyes, they may be a layperson to libertarian politics or libertarian ideas, but getting involved in cryptocurrencies also increases their awareness of a lot of these libertarian thoughts. They start reading things, they start thinking in different ways. So we should all be very, very happy that we've had an increase in interest in cryptocurrencies by this amount, because I think it means a good percentage of those people are being exposed to alternative forms of thinking when it comes to authority. So that's one reason to be very happy.
And I just want to say, when they use cryptocurrencies, they're unwittingly engaging in libertarian activity. So that's the beauty of it too. It's not simply they're exposed to these ideas by using these non-coercive ways of funding things. It's inherently libertarian.
Let's see. Whoops. Okay, like I said, more than 200 billion and thousands of cryptocurrencies have popped up. A lot of them are referred to as ICOs, which is initial coin offerings. You may have heard of initial public offerings. This is a new way for people to raise money in some of the projects that they want to do. And it's unregulated at this stage, so it's actually pretty fascinating. There's going to be a lot of people that are scam artists and such that come into the space and try to take people's money, but there's going to be a lot of legitimate projects as well. And we can see that this is the amount of investment in ICOs is twice as much as venture capitalists invested into technology in 2017. So That's a pretty impressive number. And it's a way for the average person, you know, a lot of people don't know, but you have to be an accredited venture capitalist. You have to be a licensed venture capitalist to be able to spend money on projects. Whereas with ICOs, it can be just the everyday average guy like you and I that can now have a seat at the table and help inspire different projects.
And by the way, what that means often too is that you have to have, I think, like $500,000 in assets or more just to be accredited. So it's obviously beyond the reach of a lot of people.
So we're seeing a rise in that altogether. Let's see. Okay, so of course, as libertarians, we're probably aware of some of the reasons why cryptocurrencies would be attractive to people. You have, of course, the Federal Reserve and central banking policies that have led to the devaluation of our dollar and the purchasing power of our dollar over time, which really hurts people on fixed incomes because they may have a certain amount in savings or a certain amount they get every month from some sort of retirement or benefit package. But that essentially buys less. So essentially the government is robbing from these people. And so that's the helicopter money ideas of Ben Bernanke to flood the system with money to get government out of debt. You know, this is a Henry Ford quote about, you know, if we really knew how money was created, there'd be riots in the street. Centralized institutions, money out of thin air. Of course, financial repression. You know, there are, like we touched on with the venture capitalists, ideas of investing. There's all types of ways that money and taxation is used to actually repress our freedom, and in a way, sort of not allow true liberty to spring from all of what we want, because of course these ideas take money, and largely the U.S. dollar is used to you know, limit that in many ways.
Now, I want to add real quick, you know, there have been accusations against cryptocurrencies that they fund terrorism or fund drugs or these other things. And I mean, not that that hasn't happened. I mean, all monies have been used to fund illicit things, right? But the number one funder of terrorism and drugs throughout the world and violence is the US dollar. I probably don't need to tell you that. But I also want to add, too, one thing that makes cryptocurrencies that we haven't mentioned a safeguard against the dollar is that they have a hard limit on the number of units that are created. There's only a finite amount of cryptocurrency that is ever created, and therefore it's not inflationary. Sorry.
And with central banking, as Chris alluded to, this really does shift wealth from the many to the few, because the few have access to that money printing power before the rest of us get access to it. So therefore, they're able to buy up assets and use it, you know, between their friends, you know, having connections through central banks, and then we get the leftovers. So this really does shift real assets, real financial wealth to the few from the many. And it's one thing that I think libertarians are very familiar with, and one of the deep concerns they have to be motivated to get into politics. So I don't think we have to spend too much time on that. And of course, you know, we all want to be free, and sometimes we want to be able to move our money where we want to be able to move it, and whether that's escaping taxation or some of this financial repression we talked about. But that's very hard with the U.S. dollar. It's definitely a lot harder to do it. Even with gold, for instance, there's quite a bit of fees involved in moving it, and moving it securely and privately is very expensive. So cryptocurrencies allow people to be able to transfer and move that money privately and securely for the first time, really in human history. This is why it's one of the reasons why it's so profound that we're living in this time to see this happen.
And just to add to that real quick, to add to what he's saying, so cryptocurrencies are peer-to-peer. In other words, you can send it from yourself directly to any person around the world, virtually instantaneously for extremely cheap. If you tried to do that with fiat, all fiat, unless you're using cash, which you wouldn't want to send cash in an envelope around the world because you'd probably lose it. All fiat goes through a third party, which is the Federal Reserve System or the central bank of the particular country. So just to clarify, that's why cryptocurrency is so powerful.
And more than 50% of people on Earth have no access to global financial markets. This is pretty profound. We take that for granted in this country. thinking that anybody can open up a bank, anybody can buy stocks. It's very easy in this country, but 50% of the world has no idea how to do any of those things or even access to do any of those things. But what we like to say in cryptocurrency is not only do we want to bank the unbanked, we want to give them the ability to have that access, but we also want to unbank the bank, us, right? We want to get our money outside of the clutches of the central banking cartels. So it's banking the unbank and unbank the bank. That's what we like to sort of refer to it as in crypto circles. Let's see. Okay, so just to give you a little background of Dash and the bigger context of Bitcoin. Bitcoin was the first, of course, we all know. Back in 2009, it was minted. The first block reward was minted by a gentleman named Satoshi Nakamoto, who basically came up with all the original code originally, and a lot of people added to the code over years. It's an open source project. But we all know his motivations to doing this. What he was sort of motivated by was definitely out of a libertarian sort of mindset, because he links in the Genesis block, this will forever be there. It will never be erased because of the Bitcoin blockchain is decentralized. He links to an article talking about bailouts, and he was concerned that government should not be allowed to have the ability to control our money anymore, and that Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies needed to replace the government's ability to print money out of thin air. And that's what he put in the Genesis block, a link to a Times article about bailouts. So we know what motivated him. Let's see. Okay, so what exactly is Bitcoin? We'll sort of go over this real briefly. There's only one of the features that makes it attractive is there's only 21 million tokens. Only 21 million Bitcoins will ever be minted. I think the last one will be minted in the year 2145, I think they've estimated. So we're ways off to that. There's about 16 million in circulation now, but there's every 10 minutes, there's a block reward, and this is how Bitcoins are minted. They have people called miners that work out a very difficult math algorithm in order to basically balance the global financial checkbook of Bitcoin, is how you want to think about it. And when they do that, they get rewarded a certain amount of Bitcoins. And right now that amount is 12.5 Bitcoins. Every 4 years, it gets cut in half. So next time they solve those things, in I think 2.5 years from now, it'll go down to 6.25 Bitcoins will be rewarded to the miners that do that. So it has a slight inflation right now, right? Every 10 minutes, there's 12 of them created, but eventually it is a very deflationary, a powerfully deflationary currency over time. It really is. The price of Bitcoin is really determined by supply and demand. We have a lot of problems in financial markets with price discovery and finding out how much something is really worth, if you really think about it. Even in gold, I know there's a lot of gold purists that believe that it really is supply and demand, and the amount of mining that goes on, and the amount found out there, and the amount of people that want to hold it securely and physically. But we all know that the gold markets are tampered with. You have the COMEX in London that definitely tampers with the price of gold and silver. So it's not completely out of the control, just precious metals themselves. But cryptocurrency is truly supply and demand, and that's because the blockchain is completely transparent. You know how many are in existence and where those addresses are. There's no derivatives market that is able to manipulate the amount of supply that the amount of supply of Bitcoins that are in existence. So it's very powerful to have something as free market as that. So we went over a little bit about the blockchain and how that looks and how it works. I think, how many people are familiar with basic blockchain technology? Most people here, or yeah, a lot of people here. But a blockchain is basically, it's a network, if you think about it. It's a network of computers that run a certain software. And this software basically keeps a ledger if you think about it. Keeps basically the entire global Bitcoin checkbook, if you want to think about it. All the different transactions that have ever happened are in this blockchain, and people who run this software are running the checking algorithm to make sure that everything lines up. And that's what basically a blockchain is. It's a decentralized ledger. If you want to think about it as a checkbook, that's sort of how it helped me in the beginning. Everything's peer-to-peer, so I don't need a middleman. I don't need to go to my Chase Bank or my Wells Fargo to pay somebody. I don't need to use a Visa network to pay somebody. As long as they have a Bitcoin wallet or a Dash wallet, I'm able to pay them directly, peer-to-peer, using simple applications on my phone or my computer. So it's directly person-to-person, so that's a big part of it. And it's done through communication. It's either done wirelessly through cell phone technology or the internet. So this is pretty cool stuff. Like I said, it's scarce. There's only 21 million of them. And it can be sent just through a simple cell phone connection or an internet connection. And if you think about it, it is really sort of gold 2.0. It's going to be, I think, in the future, something that people prefer to hold over gold because it's so easily transferable and you can do it securely and privately. So there's real advantages to gold in lots of ways. Now, Bitcoin was the first one, but now there's about, I don't know, there's 100 of them every day, it seems, that are new, but I think there's over 2,000 cryptocurrencies now. So it is a huge, wild west open market of cryptocurrencies out there that Bitcoin has created this revolution in. And I mean, if it was not a good idea, there probably wouldn't be this amount of innovation in the space. But it's a good sign that there are so many people interested in this, and so many people dedicating talent to this, that you know that it is something profound. And that's a good sign, I think. But Bitcoin was the first mover. But some of the problems with being a first mover, if we think about what are some other first movers out there? Well, we had, before Facebook, there was MySpace.
No longer exists, basically.
Nobody uses MySpace. Although I think I still have a MySpace account that I sometimes look at, sadly. I think there's a few people that remember that. There was a VHS beta. Beta was first and better, but VHS beat it out, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean that you are the top dog forever just because you came out first. So something to think about. For instance, we're going to go over some of those problems. Right now, Bitcoin is about 30 to 60 minutes for it to be actually validated in the blocks. There's a lot of congestion in the market. A lot of people are using it. So your transaction doesn't always get added to the next block, which is every 10 minutes. Sometimes it takes 5 or 6 blocks to come before your transaction gets added to it. And that can take a long time, which makes it really cumbersome for people to use for retail and other things. Also, so many people are using it right now that the fees have gone up. The fees are now $3 to $4 on the average Bitcoin transaction. Now, some of this has gone down recently because there's transactions that have been so low. That's what there might be some people here that think that I'm, being a bit exaggerative with this, but transactions have decreased, and that's not a good thing. We want people using this. So sometimes the fees are a little lower because the transactions have decreased. But it's $3 to $4 for fees, so you're not going to use Bitcoin to go buy a coffee. You're not going to use Bitcoin to go buy really anything if it's going to cost you $3 to use it, right? That's going to be very difficult. So only large transactions are really profitable now for people. It's pseudo-anonymous. A lot of people think that Bitcoin is anonymous, but there are now lots of companies dedicated to going through the blockchain, linking different addresses to different things, and they're able to use basically artificial intelligence programs and algorithms to break down who owns what and where they own it and how much of that do they own. And that's what's meant by pseudo-anonymous. You have to work really hard and run a lot of very complicated and expensive software, but eventually you can find out a lot of what people own, who they are, and where they own it. So that's why it's pseudo-anonymous. So Bitcoin has a bit of a growing pain issue. It doesn't really know how to make decisions collectively. And this is a problem for all decentralized projects. And we saw recently it was trying to raise its block size, meaning how many transactions you can put in each block. And it couldn't figure out how to do this, and there was a lot of debate, and it went on for 3 years. People were fighting and debating this. And so what eventually happened is there were forks in the protocol, and it spawned off all these different coin chains. And so that is a real problem that this first mover Bitcoin has, is how to make decisions without splitting the chain. So we have Dash now. Just to do a little comparison, we have a governance structure. Yes, we got that. We have, and I'll break down exactly how that works. 45% of the rewards go to miners. Let's see. 45% of the rewards go to the nodes, and Bitcoin does not have a budget system, and Dash has a budget system. Getting up there to its speed, every transaction with Dash is about 2 seconds. Now that's a stark comparison to Bitcoin, which is 30 to 60 minutes. We're talking fractions of a penny or less, 3 cents or less for each transaction fee with Dash. And there's a feature in Dash called Private Send that uses a 2-tier system that allows you to send every transaction privately, which is something as libertarians we should all be very excited about, that we get to give each other money without anybody, any third party knowing about it.
And I just want to add, Dash is as fast basically as Visa or MasterCard, except without the 3 or 4% fees to the merchant, which the merchant doesn't pay. Those fees get imputed to the final cost of goods that you as a consumer pay. So Dash is as fast as Visa or MasterCard, but for a fraction of the cost.
So just going over a little bit of the history of Dash, it was founded in 2014 by a gentleman named Evan Duffield. He's a developer out of Arizona. And his mission was to create something that you could privately spend as cash, like we all spend cash in our pocket. He wanted something digitally that we're able to do privately. And that's why he first started something called Xcoin. It turned into Darkcoin, and then it was rebranded Dash here later in 2015. The max supply of Dash, similar to Bitcoin, there's only 18.5 million at Dash, whereas Bitcoin has 21 million. There's currently only 7 million in circulation. So there's actually a very low amount of Dash out there, which as an investor, you might want to think about. That's actually a really good thing. It means that the more interest that Dash has, the less Dash there is to go around, so it's more of a scarce good, which means the price should be higher, because the more people want something that there's less of course the value of that good goes up. So something to think about as an investor. Let's see, this is a little old. One Dash is not $350 anymore. One Dash is equal to about 670, I think, today, or something like that.
650 to 700.
So it's a little bit, it's almost twice that much. The market cap is, I think, $6 billion now, so it's about twice the market cap there.
Its all-time high was around, I think, 1,500. But even with that correction, Dash is up quite a bit.
So it has 4,600 masternodes, which are people running. This doesn't take into account the miners. These are people just running full nodes. So these masternodes are actually incentivized to help the network because they get paid, and I'll sort of go over that. They get 45% of the block reward. Oh, okay, we have 5 minutes. I'll sort of run through this. Dash has something called Instant Send, and that allows it to send in 2 to 3 seconds. It has something that a lot of people enjoy. It has Private Send, I mentioned. We're able to send these transactions anonymously, really fast. They get mixed with a bunch of other coins so that it creates enough anonymity that people can't figure out where the transaction came from. So you basically mix it into a pool of other Dash coins, and therefore mathematically it creates anonymity because there's no way to prove where the transaction came from, which is very, very important in cryptocurrency. But getting back to what we started the talk on, the real game changer for Dash is something called the DAO. It's the Decentralized Autonomous Organization. It was the first one in cryptocurrency to really develop this. So every 10 minutes when those or in Dash, it's every 3 minutes when a block is found and there's a block reward. 45% of the reward goes to miners. 45% of the reward goes to this system of masternodes. These are just people running this software. And in order to have a masternode, you have to have 1,000 Dash put up as collateral. So you're basically an investor with a proof of stake in this coin that allows you to take part in the network and help the network, and you get paid for that. So you get, I think it's 1.8 Dash about every 8 days. So that's right now about $1,000 every 8 days for having this 1,000 Dash and collateral set up to help the network. Bitcoin doesn't have this. Bitcoin has something called the Attaboy network. and literally that refers to if you run a node, you get a slap on the back that says, "Attaboy, thanks for helping us out." Whereas Dash, you actually get paid helping the network out, which is a revolution when it comes to cryptocurrency, because it creates, as libertarians, we all know, it creates incentives in the marketplace for more and more people to join and help the network spread. So that's a real revolution there. Let's see. Okay, and then 10% of the block reward, okay, 45 is 90, 10% is left over for the budget system. And the budget system, as a masternode, you're able to vote on different proposals that people make to the budget system. So we can think about this as the first real experiment in decentralized governance. So if you're a masternode owner, you basically have a stake in voting for these proposals. And like we heard earlier, some of the proposals were helping flood victims in Texas, or helping earthquake victims in Mexico. And 10% of the budget went to helping those efforts. And there's about, I don't know, every month there's probably about 40 to 50 different proposals that people can vote on. So it's really revolutionary. So that's the DAO. And like I said, this is also called DGBB, Decentralized Governance by Blockchain. It's really the first one to ever really do this. Sort of went over that. You write a proposal, you submit it to the network, and people vote on it, and they decide, the masternodes vote on it, and they decide whether or not this is going to help the network, and they vote yes or no. And then if they like it, you're actually paid. They pay you to your direct Dash address. This is pretty cool because you never need to know anybody's name. You don't need to know any of the masternodes' names. Yet people can take part in basically a one big corporation or cooperative government all together, changing the world and doing it anonymously and privately. And it is working. The Dash DAO has funded lots of really interesting projects. One of the top MMA fighters in the world just got funded by Dash. He now wears Dash in the ring everywhere he goes. So this is catching on in circles outside of libertarian and blockchain circles. People are realizing, hey, if I can help advertise Dash, I can get paid. So that's really cool.
And if you've flown United recently, there's a Dash commercial on the that screen on your seat that's been running recently.
So the debate we went over with Bitcoin and raising the block size. They couldn't figure it out. They fought over it for 3 years, and it split the network in half. And that was a real tragedy. Dash did it. They proposed the same thing, tried to figure it out, and in 24 hours, they voted on upping the block size. So it gives you a little bit of a difference. 3 years, no one was able to agree, and it hurt the network. 24 hours, there was an agreement, and the network is doing really well. Okay, so I think we're about done here. These are some of the investors. The real game changer is something called Evolution. This is set to come out this summer. So you still are sort of ahead of the game if you want to invest in Dash. Evolution is basically as described as the PayPal of crypto. But of course, PayPal is a third party where they know where and when you send all your money. So we don't want that, but it's described as just basically ease of use of payments. So easy that your grandmother can use it, like PayPal, but decentralized, private, and anonymous, not like PayPal. So anyway, if we just did these guys did their proposal, and we went over that earlier with Danny, but this is actually straight from their proposal here. We would also ask for help starting a charitable organization we are calling DASHCares. Our experience combined with helping the core team establish exciting relationships and onboarding new businesses has given us a unique place inside the Dash ecosystem, and we would like to leverage that for more charity work as well as helping drive remittance networks through Dash. This proposal seeks funding for all of these, creating immense value for the network. So they put that out. It was a little bit more complicated, a lot more description, but that's basically the essence of what they proposed. And they got it, and they're doing that, and they're helping people all around the world. So,
Hey, can I take 30 seconds to tell people about the show? All right, let me do that real quick. So, what you've been hearing about me and Danny and Harlan. Harlan is the founder of The Crypto Show. We mentioned that. The Crypto Show can be found on 89.1 FM, Texas Liberty Radio here in Austin, Texas, on Logos Radio Network, every Wednesday and Sunday from 8 to 10 p.m. If you go to the cryptoshow.com website, you can also live stream our broadcast from there. All our archives link from that website to audio SoundCloud, and you can also learn more at the website about DASHCares. There's a link there. And just real quick, we've had guests like Ron Paul on the show, Ben Swan, John McAfee, Kim.com, Jeffrey Tucker, formerly of the Mises Institute, Bob Murphy, economist and formerly of the Mises Institute. And we've done other topics like Ross Ulbricht and freeing him, if you're familiar with that. We've had his mother, Lynn Ulbricht, on the show many times. We've done cannabis legalization with groups like Republicans Against Marijuana Prohibition and Heather Fazio, formerly of the Libertarian Party, who now helps at the Marijuana Policy Project. And then other topics like jury nullification and other libertarian things. So check it out again, The Crypto Show, thecryptoshow.com. Thank you.
all right. Thank you. If you want more on Dash, you can go to dash.org is their official site, or dashforcenews.com to read about some of the different Dash proposals out there changing the world. But thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Have a great rest of your evening here.
Another round of applause, everyone. Thank you, guys.
You bet. Turn this off.